It begins here every 2 years on a January day. The mood and informality belying the conflicts and the powers of the House of Representatives. For here is the arena for conflict, where issues too large for local solution are fought over and resolved. The leadership may change, and the membership too, but the process is ongoing. And one bill considered and passed by a majority of the 435 members of the House can change the lives of millions of Americans.
According to the precedent, the chair will now administer the oath of office. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which you are about to enter, so help you God? I do. You are declared members of the Congress.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union for the consideration of the bill H.R. 6161.
A bill to amend the Clean Air Act and for other purposes.
WJR Detroit. It's 1 o'clock, Farmer Jack savings time.
I'm Burke Hulley, WJR News. The big three automakers warned again today that if Congress did not amend the 1970 Clean Air Act to extend deadlines for meeting auto emissions standards required by law, they would be forced to close plants this fall, threatening the Detroit area with widespread unemployment. The automakers maintain that to meet the auto emission standards with existing technology would mean substantially higher sticker prices and lower fuel economy. Rather than break the law, spokesman for the big three automakers said, we will close the plants.
John Dingell has truly been a representative of just people, but especially a representative of the United Auto Workers. And it gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce the congressman from the 16th District, John Dingell.
We're having a tough time having a balanced and rational bill. The fight is going to commence next week. We're going to see to it that we get a proposal which keeps the industry going, which keeps our people at work. And I want to tell you that I'm delighted that my friend Bard Young and I, and the UAW, and Doug Frazier, and Leonard Woodcock, and all of you are together on these bills right here. Those are the bills which give you air pollution emission standards which will keep the plants open next fall, which will see to it that we have the best mix of fuel economy, health, environment, consumer costs, and jobs. It's a great coalition we put together when the UAW and the auto industry and the auto suppliers and all of the other people who are concerned with jobs in the industry are together to see to it that we get a proposal which lets the average guy have a car that he can afford. I'm proud of you, I commend you, and I thank you. And those are my remarks. I look forward to working with you in this and other matters as years come. Thanks.
Here's the latest from the newsroom of WBBR, the talk of Palm Beach County. Today in Washington, environmental and health groups charged the big three automakers with delaying tactics in their efforts to meet the strict air standard of the 1970 Clean Air Act. The American Lung Association cites auto pollution as one of the major causes of respiratory and heart disease. Citing recent studies, the association says that over 300,000 Americans...
All of us share Mr. Rogers' strong concern for the health of all Americans. We express our gratitude for the almost 23 years Paul Rogers has given us in the U.S. Congress. Our friend in Congress, Mr. Health, the Honorable Paul G. Rogers.
Thank you very much. I think what we need to get across, and most people do understand it when it is explained exactly what the bill will do, is that it has as its basis the health care of American people. And if we don't do something about polluted air, our health is very adversely affected. We've just been through some 15 days in Washington, constant alerts. You know what happened in the hospitals? The hospital census rose. We have illnesses. People are told to stay in their houses, particularly those with emphysema, lung problems, the elderly. And I don't think there's any cause greater than to work together. And the people are really generous when there is human suffering involved. And I am constantly amazed, no matter where I go in this country, to see the response to people when it's a good cause and they understand it. They give support.
As the 95th session begins, Paul Rogers returns to his desk in Washington to prepare to battle auto interests and protect his 1970 Clean Air Act. As chairman of the Subcommittee on Health and Environment, Rogers, with the help of his staff and environmental experts, is determined to introduce a bill with tough auto pollution standards to continue to clean up the nation's air.
Get a briefing on that.
They want to know, are there special problems in air pollution strategy, control strategies, and chemistry and so on in the high altitude areas and in the Gulf Coast?
Well, as long as they're going to do it, I think we ought to try to cooperate with them.
Evidently, they are focusing even more on the air pollution problem.
On air?
Yeah.
That sounds good. We'll do it.
How are you, sir?
Good morning.
Good.
Good morning, boss. Good morning.
John Dingell occupies a house office not far from Rogers. It is from here that he will mobilize his staff and allies against the Rogers bill in an attempt to modify strict auto emission standards and deadlines, and give the industry 5 more years to develop new technology and keep workers on the job.
The new turbocharged 6-cylinder Buick is having some problems meeting the California numbers. I understand. We'll check that out further.
Let me tell you something I think is becoming abundantly clear to everybody who's looking into it, that the President's energy plan and the Clean Air Act are going to collide very soon. And somebody's going to have to give.
Come in and have a seat. I think there are enough chairs to find...
Rogers knows that he will need support from all over America to win against the auto interests. He brings together environmental, health, and other groups interested in a strong clean air law to help organize a grassroots lobbying effort to pressure members of Congress. The chief tools of lobbying: letters, phone calls, and visits to congressional offices.
You know, when you take the National Association of Realtors, for example, 500,000 members, that's potentially a lot of letters coming into the Congress, but then you have to analyze, you know, it's not what we call a bread and butter issue.
You need to have a crisis and an emergency, then you'll get a lot of letters fast.
Requiring that the automobiles be cleaned up before we got into indirect sources is still the one main feature that all of us support very much.
That is an important feature, not to approach it with the Dingell Amendment, which does nothing for 5 years, basically. We've got to have some progress in cleaning up the automobile so that the cleanup problems from the automobile are not dumped on the community, which then involves all of you in having to take action to clean up what Detroit ought to clean up itself.
The appearance of Leonard Woodcock, president of the United Auto Workers, followed by Republican James Broyhill of North Carolina at a joint House-Senate press conference, signifies an alliance of Democrats and Republicans, labor and management, united for one purpose: to modify and delay for 5 years the tough standards of the 1970 Clean Air Law.
Standards that John Dingell and I are advocating today is calling for a balanced approach. In other words, what we're saying is that we can achieve our national clean air goals, and at the same time that it will not result in unreasonable cost increases in automobiles that have to be borne by consumers.
Rapid action is needed to resolve the questions regarding future standards, or auto production will be severely disrupted with widespread economic impact.
You ought to note that we intend to push this vigorously at every point
and we are conceding no fights, but we're going to pick the ground that best serves us. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Well, again, friend, welcome aboard. We ought to talk about political questions of timing, all of which are important.
Well, they've all changed their testimony slightly because of the new Dingle proposal.
Oh, I see.
Since Paul Rogers is chairman of the Subcommittee on Health and Environment, he prepares to launch the first phase in creating the new Clean Air Bill.
Okay? Okay. All right. Let's see how we go. Good morning. Good morning. How are you this morning?
John Dingle is not a member of the Rogers Subcommittee, so his coalition will be represented here by Jim Broyhill.
Good morning. Well, here we go again, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Hi, Jim.
All right.
How are you?
We'll shake hands and let the best man.
All right.
I think you're that man.
No, here we go. Here we go.
You know, your brother, Mr. Dingle.
The subcommittee will come to order, please. The subcommittee begins today 4 days of hearings on amendments to the Clean Air Act. We hope in the various sections governing the various sources of pollution to meet our desires for a cleaner, healthier environment for the American public with the achievable. So the Clean Air Act is a symbol, one symbol of what we want for the people of this nation, an improved quality of life. And in doing so, we will balance the immediate needs of our people for additional employment, for conservation of energy, and for giving confidence to our economy. Unless I am mistaken, no one scheduled to testify will say he or she is not for clean air and a cleaner environment. So the debate will center on who is polluting and how much it will cost to clean up and how long it will take to do the task. Our first witness this morning will be Dr. Carl Schei from the American Lung Association.
The principal conclusion I'd like to bring before your subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, is that non-attainment of air quality and further delays in achieving mandated auto emission standards are likely to have a significant adverse public health impact. It is particularly children, the elderly, all asthmatics, and persons with chronic respiratory and heart disease that are most susceptible to the effects of air pollution. And these groups comprise a substantial segment.
In closing, I would like to try to communicate to this committee the urgency which I and the other citizens in...
More than 80 witnesses bring fact and opinion into this room, building a record of evidence they hope will influence the legislation.
Additives are going in fuel, we could start to see some problems cropped up. We're very concerned about it.
As far as I'm concerned, the standards are correct. That does not mean that they do not deserve regular reevaluation. I said
They support a two-car strategy. The problem is more severe in California. And the industry's gotten away with murder. And, you know, that's why they don't move forward. Because they don't, it costs them some money and some effort. And if they're not pushed, they won't move.
Does 90% seem to be an agreeable figure to you? Would 70%?
Do you have any data at all to indicate that health and welfare are being harmed by oxidant levels in the Hampton Roads area?
And what else are we talking about?
Nitrates.
That affects the lives of people.
With regard to carbon monoxide, I think the clear showing of later experiences, there's no endangerment to the public health in maintaining it at 9. The 300-day study of DOT shows that.
The question that we have to face is the incentives to the industry to reach standards that they claim they now can't achieve. And the question is, what incentives do we provide for them to achieve these standards if we lessen the standards that were required by the law, grant additional time for them to meet those standards, and in fact, waive some of the standards we originally set as goals for the protection of the public health?
Now, the industry was
but
most
given
reluctant...
that fact, pardon me for interrupting you, but given that fact, that when we set standards and deadlines to protect the public health, that every time we approach the time for those standards to be met, that we're leaving ourselves open to have the industry come in and lobby us, rather than the industry make that sincere effort to meet those standards.
You're suggesting we abandon our rights of petition to the Congress.
No,
sir, we will not.
I'm terribly disappointed because point 4 was the commitment that was made in 1970.
How do we enforce this, Mr. Woodcock? I mean, we've had 3 delays now of a year each, and as well-intentioned as your testimony is, it is, in fact, an additional rather significant delay, both in the short term and in the long term.
Well, we talk about delays, and we talk about the fact that the numbers in this statute are sacrosanct. The numbers in the statute of the Air Amendment Acts of 1970 where somebody said, let's reduce all the pollutants by 90%. And that reduction by 90% brings us to X, Y, and Z, therefore X, Y, and Z are the numbers. And they've suddenly become sacrosanct. They weren't based upon any scientific analysis. They weren't based upon any technological analysis. They were based upon on a very good, in my opinion, assumption that their feet needed to be kept to the fire because they began by saying the automobile isn't even a part of the problem and we don't need to do anything. And so, very considerable progress has been made. But those numbers have no sanctity.
Mr. Walgren?
As a freshman congressman, I've been approached very directly by both the United Auto Workers, who were very helpful to me in being elected, and by auto dealers and people representing the management of the industry. And so I wanted to ask you personally, do you feel that if the standards are not lessened, would the auto industry be able to manufacture a normal auto year in the year coming up?
They stated when we were on the Senate side that if the numbers are not changed, we will not violate the law, we will simply shut down. And that process begins by the month of July. I say that simply as a statement of fact.
I want to commend you, Mr. Woodcock, for your position, and I know that in your recommendation that the health considerations were a very prime factor in the judgment that you have made.
We will adjourn the committee until 2 o'clock this afternoon, which time we will continue the hearing. The committee stands adjourned until 2.
The hearings will last 4 days. Rogers has scheduled a question of whether or not the auto companies can meet his strict standards for the last day.
But that was good work. Subcommittee will come to order, please. We are continuing our hearings on the Clean Air Act, and we have a very distinguished panel today from the automotive industry.
Chrysler Corporation takes its position in support of the Dingell-Boyle numbers. Moreover, from a practical standpoint, we've just about run out of time for 1979. Accordingly, we believe the first order of business is for Congress to carry over the 1977 emission standards through the 1978 and 1979 model years.
You are here telling me now that you have already conducted tests with V8 engines which meet the test of the statutory standards. Now, how can you ask me for 5 more years under those circumstances?
We're not talking about our technical ability to meet the standards one way or another. What we are talking about is that meeting the standards involves a number of trade-offs that should be considered. What we've got to do is to say, how do we clean up the air at the lowest possible cost? And until you gentlemen look at that overall problem that way, I'm afraid you're coming up with a lot of wrong answers.
Thank you.
Well, let me just ask a few questions, if I may now. I think from the testimony I've heard then, we're all agreed that technology is no problem. In other words, we have the know-how to accomplish statutory standards by technology. Is there any disagreement with that?
I disagree, sir.
Is this what you're telling me now, that this is the only technology we know how to do is to reach a 1 NOx?
We still do not have the technology to assure that we can meet the 0.4 NOx. This is Ford Motor Company. We've said it consistently.
What about General Motors?
I think we're in exactly the same position. The one test surely gives us great hope that one might in the end achieve that level on a production car, but it's a far cry from having done it.
Does the car have to drive as part of it, or does it just have to show the numbers?
No.
I mean, do you think it should run?
No, it's possible.
I mean, we'd like to have them run for the life of the car and have it run fairly smoothly, and that's a requirement that doesn't always show up in the data.
Unless we reduce from 2 to a 0.4 NOx, an additional 20 to 25 million people, mainly children, will be affected adversely for respiratory diseases. 25 million. Why don't you help us with a reasonable figure, and we'll try to be reasonable in setting that goal with a waiver if necessary, if you can't reach it, and see if we can't come to some consensus on that. And then we'll try to do that
which we ought to hold it in conference and so forth. Committee stands in recess.
Question? There has to be some positive incentive.
And it's got to be something that is scheduled for long enough in advance to where people will believe, yeah, this is really going to happen, and will plan for the future on the basis.
Why don't you all let us
Mitch
have
had an edge on you, but
an
maybe
estimated time that you can reach these statutes?
try very
give
hard
us
to
some
get you the
idea,
number.
and we'll try to be reasonable.
Do you have an objection, Mr. Rogers, to treating it as it was done on the Senate side, holding it out as a research objective that we continue to look at?
You see, we are having other pressure. Let's put it in. I have no objection to a waiver. So just look at it and see if it's... How are you? Brother Mark, haven't seen you in a long time.
On March 7th, as hearings draw to a close, Paul Rogers is confident of victory in his own subcommittee. What concerns him now is what is happening in other places. John Dingell has not been idle.
I still want to talk to him about those elections at home. I had a couple minutes to talk to Dottie, and I didn't have...
While conceding victory in the subcommittee to Rogers, Dingell and his forces were lining up votes for their position, organizing auto workers, dealers, and manufacturers around the country to influence their individual congressmen against the Rogers standards.
The subcommittee will come to order, please. Continuing the markup of the Clean Air Act 77. Would the staff explain this amendment?
In this final stage of subcommittee action, the bill is reviewed section by section, amendments offered and voted upon.
Emission limitation, which is necessary to achieve the ambient standards.
Well, could he just explain Category 3? And then if you would question, and then, sir.
Category 3, which the state feels that additional growth beyond what's permissible in the Class 2 level.
Are there any other amendments to Section 108?
I would be happy to move that we have a clean bill, Mr. Chairman.
That it be reported to the full committee with the usual instructions?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
It would appear the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the bill is approved. It will be introduced as a clean bill, and those who want to co-sponsor, please advise the staff. We will ask that the bill go before the full committee when we come back from the Easter work period. Committee stands adjourned. Good work. Well done. Well done. All right, now we'll get it through the full committee and move. Got co-sponsors.
Yeah, we got 9, including Warkey.
And Walgren.
Walgren, that's a surprise. He's got a lot of heat on him, UAW.
Well, that's pretty good, I think.
Not bad, not bad.
After 3 months, the first step is over, and the tough auto emission standards advocated by Rogers have survived.
Well, that's a lot of work, gentlemen.
The committee will come to order. It has been requested that a call of the committee, so the clerk will call the names of the committee. Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Mr. Dingell.
The confrontation here in the 43-member full committee will be the bill's first real test. The protagonists are now face to face.
See what you don't understand.
I do.
No.
Mr. Santini.
No. No, no.
Mr. Gore. Mr. Sharp. Mr. Moffett.
Here, a few undecided votes will make the difference.
Mr. Russo.
One undecided is Kentucky's Tim Lee Carter, a physician, and the subcommittee's ranking Republican. Another is Democrat Martin Russo of Chicago.
To go over this with you in your office sometime this afternoon. Bob Howard, you want to put his name down?
Mr. Kruger.
We've got all of your afterparts.
Mr. Lucan.
I'll get you the letter. All 4 groups.
Mr. McGuire.
Yeah, this is the service
Mr.
people
Ottinger.
who are concerned about that problem.
I think we ought to try to figure out what our strategy is.
Let me call some of them just to see.
In late April, Rogers learns of a new development. The president recommends that in order to head off Dingell's growing strength, the Congress gives the automakers an additional year to meet strict standards. Rogers sees an opportunity to join forces with the president.
I wanted all of us to think about how we want to approach the automobile section of the bill. It would be well for us to offer the amendment, as the administration has proposed the auto section, in the full committee. so that the bill comes out as a clean bill with that in it. And if we adopt this in the committee, I think this would strengthen then the bill.
I'm sure all of us who've looked at this thing very carefully think we could even do better than what the administration is proposing. But this seems to me a reasonable compromise, and I think it could lend itself to the broadest coalition to pass it.
All right, let's go down the list right now and divide up names to contact on the full committee to see if they'll join us. John Moss.
I'll talk to him, but he certainly would be with us.
Yeah, now Dingle, of course, no way.
I'll talk to John.
Tom Lukin.
I think you should talk to Lukin also, Paul, because I think he's under some pressure.
All right, I'm sure he is.
He's getting a lot of UAW pressure.
Who is it?
Yeah. Madigan, Ed.
Is there any Republican member of the subcommittee that's going to support it?
Do we have a prayer with anybody?
I don't know. Yeah, Madigan might. Can we see everybody today and tomorrow? And by committee time, you see, we'll be meeting again tomorrow. We've got to vote. Can we go vote? And it might not hurt to start talking on the floor to friends you see. I think that wouldn't hurt us to talk. Okay. We better go vote.
Have we had a second bill
Doug,
yet?
why don't you speak to
I think this is first.
Speak to
As the full committee reconvenes, John Dingle has learned that the president has already begun calling undecided members, asking them to support Rogers. But Dingle and Broyhill have decided to make their first stand here in the full committee.
Go on. All right. It's going to be very tight.
How are you, Barbara?
So in other words, I would have to offer this first.
Yeah, you offer that first.
I offer it just as an amendment.
Right, as an amendment to Title II.
But I offer it as an amendment.
Yeah,
Then
it's in
he...
the form of an amendment to the text of Title II.
All right.
Then Dingle would have a substitute for your amendment, which would have to be voted on first.
I think maybe that's the best thing. Okay. Yeah, it didn't look good, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, could you vote with us on that?
We'll see what...
All right, see if you can. Harlan?
Yeah.
If I offer mine this way,
Let me get him here, because we had a sort of... John...
Then what we would do is he would get a vote first. Here's what I was saying about an amendment to this, which is in the form of a substitute.
It's an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Mine, what I was saying would be, this is what I was going to offer, to change that auto section to put the presidents in.
Oh, you're retreating from your earlier position?
No, I had said that. I'd already said I was going to do that.
Well, all right.
See, then John would...
Have you settled on a position yet, Rogers?
Yeah.
It would be yours or the administration's last year was yours and brought it.
Was it yours or the UAW you settled on? Which yours or UAW?
They're good gentlemen, this one.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to get down there...
That would be all right, see.
Now, John, you have to agree to this.
See what I mean?
It's all right with me. I
think it's all right.
I don't care because they both
then
are
what he would do...
You can't have two substitutes. If
I'm amending the text.
All right.
He then comes in and amends mine as a substitute.
All right. You see how you got to do it, John?
That's all right with
me.
I
don't think there's any problem.
There's no procedural advantage.
It won't matter.
Committee will be in order.
The strategy is set. Rogers will introduce an amendment incorporating the president's compromise emission levels. But Dingle's substitute amendments will be voted on first.
Florida has asked to give an amendment which would give the administration's position.
The president now has presented his energy program. The proposition he has given us now is consistent with that and has the concurrence of all of the energy people in his administration. I would urge that this be done.
From the standpoint of everything, including jobs and the economy, it is the worst set of standards that can be presented to this committee. The penalties in terms of jobs, according to the administration, of the administration proposal, now offered by the gentleman from Florida who retreats from his prior position, are 20,000 jobs. We must have clean air, but we must require the administration, in its presentation of language to this committee and to the Congress, to assure that the standards that they set do not waste fuel and confer the consumer benefits and health benefits that they allege, without documentation, exist. I urge the defeat of the administration proposal.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
General Motors right now has 2 cars testing for durability in California. Now, they haven't gone the full 50,000 yet, but they're using the 3-way catalyst, and here's what's happening. They've only been tested about 5,000 to 8,000 miles right now. Hydrocarbons, 0.25, not 0.4. Carbon monoxide, 2.5, not 3.4. Nitrogen oxide, 0.38. They're already meeting it.
The problem, of course, has that no manufacturer has been convinced that any of the test automobiles that may have been produced to date could be produced in volume and would continue to meet the standards for 5 years or for 50,000 miles.
I think what Mr. Dingley suggested is the practical solution for this country. Let's don't ruin the whole country by an overkill. Let's don't end up with unemployment that might run into the millions. So why not phase it gradually over a period of time instead of putting it all in at this one time?
Time the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell, for 2½ minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I hope the gentleman from Florida won't leave the room because I'd like to set him right on the language that he was complaining about.
Well, Dingell doesn't permit anything.
Yeah, but
look what he says.
But they don't care about that 18-month period. They care about after the 18-month period. They don't care about this 18 months.
But we protect them nevertheless by saying they can go anywhere, even if we were to go back to 5-year and 50,000. See?
I understand. I realize.
Even still.
The Department of Justice has said that the 5-year, 50,000-mile warranty is anti-competitive and against the interests of the consumer.
But you see, you were against my provisions. I'm no longer. So this is a compromise position the president presented. And Dingell didn't tell you what he was going to leave out. Help us if you can. We need it. You could do that. Here?
When they have authority to do it and take aboard the political liabilities that would affect you in your district. Now make whatever judgment you want in the light of those circumstances, but as a smart politician, and I happen to know you to do that, I see no reason why you should pick up their fartles for them.
As I understand it, one study says that 9 grams aren't going to harm health, and then another study says that it's going to cause twice as much respiratory illness in children. Is that correct? Is my understanding of it at least correct?
We have already got studies that show you have adverse health effects they've done the studies through 1990.
Okay, and that...
There's no question, but it is adverse, and it should be changed on carbon monoxide.
Thank the gentleman.
And there's no difference in cost to get there between General Motors' own figures, so there's no cost in
The gentleman has expired.
Let us lay out certainty. Let us enable our country to begin the building of automobiles which will meet the best standards that technology now says is necessary for clean air. And let us try and help President Carter save the energy, which is a major crisis for this nation.
Time the gentleman has expired.
80 to 90% of cancer today is being caused by environmental causes. That's 350,000 deaths. Not all of it comes from air pollution, but a significant amount. And it's time for us to take some action and at least to have that option. I hope you will defeat
Time
the
the
Dingell.
gentleman has expired. All time has expired, and the vote occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell, and the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Broyhill. Is there objection to taking the vote by the ayes and nays? There being no objection, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Moss.
Mr. Moss votes no.
Mr. Dingell.
Votes
aye. Mr. Rogers.
No.
Mr. Van Deerlen. No. Mr. Rooney. Aye. Mr. Satterfield. Aye. Mr. Pryor. No. Mr. Ottinger. No. Mr. Waxman. No. Mr. Kruger. Mr. Worth.
No.
Mr. Sharp.
Aye.
Mr. Moffett.
No.
Mr. McGuire.
No.
Mr. Russo.
Aye.
Mr. Markey.
No.
Mr. Walgren.
Aye.
Mr. Gore.
No.
Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Broyhill. Mr. Carter. Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Skubitz. Mr. Collins. Mr. Fry. Mr. Lent.
Mr. Kruger, he didn't vote, did he? Mr. Dingle has Mr. Kruger.
Kruger votes aye by proxy.
Kruger votes aye by proxy.
Mr. Moffett voted. Mr. McGuire voted. Clerk will announce the...
Mr. Staggers has a proxy.
No, sir.
No proxy? He gave it to me.
I returned it to him, Mr. Rogers.
Well, may I
The clerk will announce the vote.
21 ayes and 21 noes.
Failed.
And the amendment fails for lack of a majority.
On a tie vote, John Dingle has lost.
What you say?
I've already shook with John. Yeah. Tobe, thanks, baby. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Good work.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't know
for the good work.
Didn't know about. Congratulations. I didn't know about Staggers.
I didn't either. Susan, good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Timothy.
What a
It's
delight.
great.
We got to thank Dr. Carter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry.
I understood, and you helped us on the last vote. That's great. So help us on. I understand.
Actually, between us, we may be better served because we have the identity of the amendment intact. I'm not troubled. Not in the smallest.
Jim Lord, the Wall Street Journal.
How do you do?
Can you turn this around on the floor?
You bet. We're going to do it.
Do you notice the White House getting into this?
Yes, I do. They also made some commitments they would not.
All right.
Do you think you can sustain this
Bob,
on the floor?
go get the White House on the phone. I want to talk to the president. Yeah.
Do you think you can support this on the
Thank
floor
you.
now, this
Yes.
administration position?
I hope we can.
Did the White House do any last-minute lobbying? On the
Well, I'm sure. I hope they did. We asked them to.
The answer is yes.
Call the president now?
Thanks, Mark. Tell him we came out pretty well.
What does it augur for the floor situation?
Well, it augurs another fight, but it was...
Why did Dr. Carter, I mean, what was involved in the
I think
discussion with him?
Dr. Carter feels very strongly about clean air.
Did he vote with you last year on the floor?
I don't think he did,
No.
but he did this year, and importantly so.
To John Dingle, losing to Rogers in the full committee is a serious blow. But the deciding round still lies ahead on the floor with the 435 members of the House of Representatives. To obtain victory there, Dingle will have to increase his lobbying pressure. Auto dealers, auto manufacturers, auto workers must be urged to come to Washington to persuade their representatives to send telegrams, to write letters.
UAW local regions, the AFL-CIO people, along with the automakers and auto dealers.
By the end of May, no one in the House remains untouched by the arguments. Fresh from his victory, Rogers comes before the Rules Committee, which establishes the procedures under which bills are considered on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, we're asking for a rule, again, on the Clean Air Act amendments. Mr. Dingle and Broyhill.
Congressmen Dingle and Broyhill will be asking the committee for a different procedure. Each side wants a rule more favorable to its floor strategy.
Any point of having to argue that point here, since we have no objection to the amendment being presented on the floor, where it can then be argued and members can decide.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. It's Dr. Carter here. Dr. Carter, it's Mr. Broyhill here.
So important is the Rules Committee that its decisions on procedure could make the difference between victory and defeat.
I'd like to ask that Mr. Dingle join me here. That's permissible.
Without objection, that's so ordered. I had Mr. Dingle as the final witness.
This rule does, as far as you know, conform to the rule that you would prefer.
As long as the proposal is read title by title, it would be a little easier for us, and we would be a little less apprehensive of pitfalls in that regard.
All right, now let me find out what Mr. Rogers thinks. I'm curious. He's back there gesturing, but not talking.
Mr. Chairman, may I just say this? The committee feels it would be well to go section by section. There are 10 very controversial items within the Dingle alone.
The real reason for the request of the gentleman from Michigan is perfectly legitimate. He wants to get the advantage that he can get from having it specifically made in order by number. But that's perfectly legitimate. It's been done all the time around here. And the real reason for the gentleman from Florida wanting it done in what is the normal way, unless you have a special rule, is that he thinks it makes it easier for him to argue against the whole by arguing against the parts. Now, that's a fair statement, isn't it?
I think so.
All things being equal, the Rules Committee usually grants the procedural request of the committee from which the bill comes. But the forces here are not equal. The organized Dingle-Broyhill lobbying effort has also reached the Rules Committee. The first vote will come on the Dingle-Broyhill request. The second, whether to send the bill to the floor for debate.
As many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is carried. Now on the resolution as amended, all in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion as amended is carried.
Finally, the Dingle forces have a significant victory. The bill goes to the floor under the rule they requested. Rogers now requests that House Speaker Tip O'Neill and the Democratic leadership support his committee bill, hoping official party support will pressure undecided members and win votes. Dingle attends the meeting of the party's Steering and Policy Committee to oppose the move.
I would like to say that emphatically the Policy Commission should stay out of this matter and should allow the House to work its will. Studies have indicated...
Dingle's argument is that his party is too closely divided on this issue for it to take an official position one way or the other.
This issue should be thrashed out on the floor without action by the Policy Committee. In any event...
You'll have to have equal time.
We had a big dispute on the Dingle-Broyhill amendment, and we lost that amendment, and it will be offered on the floor of the House, and I would urge all of our members to support it. And other than that, I would let Dr. Carter go forward because he's lived with this bill for weeks.
If we're going forward, we must adopt one of these amendments, and I feel that the Rogers amendment is preferable in this case.
Isn't there some problem?
Citing possible effects on the economy, the Republican leadership is united behind the Dingle-Broyhill position, with one exception. Dr. Carter had provided the crucial vote for Rogers in the full committee, but here, on this issue, he is almost alone.
But to not proceed like this is just not wanting to clean up there, as I see it.
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to go for another trip with him.
Dingle leaves the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee with another significant victory. His party leaders have decided not to take a position. Facing Rogers with two problems, a split Democratic vote and a unified Republican leadership.
We have 2 or 3 fights on. One will be on the auto emissions, and this is a rough fight. I hope we can win it.
Nice seeing you.
Okay, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks so
very
much.
much.
Nice seeing you. Good to see you back in West Palm.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
With the momentum turning against him and time running out, Rogers calls together supporters like Richardson Pryor and other colleagues to plan their strategy and count heads.
I wanted to see if we could get you to help us on our clean air bill, particularly against this Dingle-Broyhill amendment. And we need you if we could get you. Bye. Carl.
I got a call from
Congressman Leach's office. He's a Republican, and he could be leaning with this. Could Dr. Carter approach him?
Hey, Claude, come in. How are you?
Paul, how are you?
Appreciate the good work.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just came in on the plane.
It's been great. Come on.
How are things going?
Fine. Well, we're just starting.
We start with a certain number of mandatory laws.
Good. Well, we want to do all we can to help.
Claude, if you speak to Sisk, I think he'll go with us this time. See, if we shift about 30 votes, we can carry this. Now, we think we've shifted already about what?
I'd say 10 to 15.
About somewhere between 10 and 15. So it won't take much more, and I think we can swing this thing. But we've really got to do the work today and in the morning. Does anyone see anybody? Ballman, Beard of Tennessee? I'll talk to him. I'm not sure. I'll try and get Carter to talk to him. What about Flood? I'll talk to Flood, and if you will, too. I think it wouldn't hurt for both of us to.
Three-line bill, but I better run over there.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And then let's try to
send me any name that I didn't have a chance to.
All right. Let's see. Jenrette. Sorry, I'm late. Johnson, Colorado. Johnson, Pennsylvania. Jones of Oklahoma. Jones of Tennessee.
I'm going to take Sam Stratton, and I'll take Gus Yatron of Pennsylvania. He's right.
Jim, I've counted 10 New York people that were either voting wrong or not voting right.
You see, if we can
Very
shift
important
30
state.
people, we'll win this thing.
If we could shift Texas, New York,
Some of
we
Georgia.
win.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Rupee. Now, I think if a number of us talk to Rupee.
Steiger on the Republican side, he's supposed
He ought to be.
Why should he be on the wrong side?
Is that the second
Second bell's on the horn.
We got to hustle.
This is the O&B rebuttal just coming this morning.
Oh, all right. Now, I've talked to Schlesinger, and he'll be getting us something. But I'll be on. But tell Dan to get them on over there. I've got to run.
How long will you
Well, we need to contact all these groups, get them contacting members on our side. Then
Less than a day remains for the Rogers forces to influence the impending floor debate.
What votes we'll get on the other side. At least we'll have some.
Elsewhere, Republican leaders meet, hoping to prevent defections.
We lose more than 20 votes on our side, do you think?
Rogers is worried because he may just lose this amendment.
He's seeing splits in his normal coalition.
Exactly.
That he isn't able to hold together. I've never seen him stopping so many guys right on the floor. And he took me aside the other day. I said, no, I'm going to be with Roy Hill.
I got about 40 telegrams from every automotive dealer in my district, every make of car, and all signed.
The personal efforts that Paul and Doc Carter are making with respect to it make a substantial difference, and they really are working harder than I ever remember them working on anything.
I think we need to stress the health effects and what
we'll do that, and I've got those
and you
figures
can
there.
really do that.
You've got the United Automobile Workers, the automobile manufacturers, and the Chamber of Commerce on one side, and the President of the United States and the environmental groups
You got
on
to
the other.
convince the 15 or 20,000 auto workers to live in my district.
The
I'm not a
scientific evidence
technical
has
guy.
been, detailed at great length, and EPA's got it all, and I'd like to show it to you.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to see it.
We've got to balance that out against what we know.
We've got to keep going forward, Delmark, on ascertaining how many of the other House members are really with us. And I want this buttoned up in about 3 hours.
I want you to see to it that you watch the 3 or 4 instances where we'll have a chance to do something about that.
Go get them.
We'll be watching.
All right, and who's doing the speeches?
I will check on that.
Yeah, we better.
They've all been assigned.
All right, is she coming or not?
She's coming. She's hanging out.
Tell her let's go.
Good luck.
Thank you. See you later. Hi.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House in the State of the Union for the consideration of the bill H.R. 6161, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to amend the Clean Air Act and for other purposes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased to present to this body the Clean Air Act amendments of '77. This measure is a product of more than 2.5 years of careful subcommittee and committee deliberations and study.
Mr. Chairman, it pains me greatly to be on the other side of the issue from my dear friend from Florida, Mr. Rogers, who came to Congress at the same time, or just a little before I did. It grieves me to see the Congress have a piece of legislation presented to it without more careful consideration. I beg my colleagues, on the basis of jobs, on the basis of fuel use, on the basis of conservation, on the basis of health and environmental benefits, the best schedule lying before you is that which is here. And you save your consumers and your constituents about $350 a car over the life of the vehicle by voting for this amendment with no help.
With no indication they had gained ground against Dingell and time running out, the Rogers forces to gain more support must compromise or lose.
The schedule to which we should go.
The time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Pryor, rise?
I have a substitute amendment at the desk.
Is there objection?
I'd like to have a rather fair appreciation of what the gentleman is doing to us here.
The difference is in this amendment and the original committee provision for this title are very simple. This is the committee proposal with two changes, which I could explain very simply. Otherwise, the other 76 pages of this amendment
would permit. The gentleman has said this is the committee's position with two changes. I've heard some talk of compromise around here. Maybe the gentleman will tell me, is he compromising with the committee? Because as I recall, he supported the committee earlier. Or is this a compromise? And if so, with whom?
In short, what this amendment does is for the years 1978, 79, and 80, it adopts the Dingell-Broyhill figures. For the years 1980 through 1983, it adopts the committee bill's figures. It splits the difference.
The committee is willing to go ahead with a compromise. We think it should have been stricter than we brought it to the House. But we understand the concern of members. Maybe you saw that editorial in the Star yesterday. Said they're tired of hearing the automobile industry come out with these same old scared thing. Going to lose jobs. We can't do it. The industry will close down. Well, that's absurd. These standards are realistic, and now we're even going overboard.
The differences between the Rogers proposal and the Pryor proposal are the differences between Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The compromise, if it in fact exists, is between two persons on the same side.
Our amendment will not only control automobile pollution, it will also save fuel, it will hold down consumer costs, and it will preserve the strength of the American economy by not forcing people out of work.
Mr. Chairman, I support the Pryor amendment to the committee amendment. It's very important that we proceed with dispatch to take these noxious substances, these carcinogenic substances from the air that are killing, absolutely killing the people of our country, both young and old.
Mr. Pepper is recognized.
As chairman of the Aging Committee, I support the Pryor substitute and opposing Dingell amendment for the simple reason that the least we can do is to do what we can to save the health, to continue the lives of the people of this country.
Question now occurs on the Pryor substitute to the Dingell amendment. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. So many as are opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
On that, I demand a record vote.
A recorded vote is demanded. So many as are in favor of a recorded vote will arise and remain standing. Obviously, a sufficient number having arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Those in favor of the Pryor substitute will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Members will cast their vote by electronic device.
It will be this single vote on the Pryor substitute to the Dingell-Broyhill amendment on which the outcome of the long struggle will be focused. As the bells summon the House members from their offices and committee rooms, no time remains to legislate or compromise. only the final moments to persuade and to vote.
Are there other members in the chamber who wish to be recorded? If not, are there members in the chamber who wish to change their vote? There being none, all time has expired. The yeas are 190, the nays are 202. The substitute amendment is not agreed to.
By 12 votes, the prior substitute amendment loses, assuring victory for the Dingell-Broyhill position. The House has decided. On this day, John Dingell and his supporters had won for their cause. The economic crisis, as articulated by the unions, automobile manufacturers, and dealers, had pressured the House to modify the committee bill. For Paul Rogers, the last-minute compromise had come too late. Now his struggle would have to be taken up by other people. In late July, the Senate and House conferees meet in the Senate caucus room to hammer out a final agreement. Since no bill can become law unless it is passed with identical language by both the House and the Senate. Led by Edmund Muskie of Maine, the Senate has passed a bill with emission standards as tough as those originally proposed by Rogers. After 9 days, an agreement is finally reached. The auto companies will be given 3, not 5 years to comply with strict standards. Understandably, neither side will be satisfied by the act which the President will sign. John Dingell had achieved less than he'd sought, but he had protected auto workers' jobs. Paul Rogers was forced to give ground on stricter standards, but he had helped reduce air pollution. Future Congresses will have to deal with clean air legislation. The faces may change, but the struggle will continue. On August 7th, 1977, H.R. 6161, an act of Congress, became law.
The preceding program was made possible by grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities and Westinghouse Electric Corporation.